and you wouldn't want things to stay that way, would you?
No.
Alright, amino acids are some of the things they've done in test tubes, and they've been over the moon with because they thought to produce something that could really bring about life. But this guy here, he says, he's a scientist, making the building blocks of life is easy. But just as bricks alone don't make a house, sort of way, before they have any kind of desired function. Alright, so you may have lots of goo, but what you do with that goo is something different. This guy here, who's an atheist up to his armpits until he died, 1996, he knows better now. He says, the number of possible ways of putting nucleotides together in a chromosome is enormous. Thus, a human being is an extraordinarily, listen to this, you know, this is a guy who doesn't believe in God. We exist, we're here, and he says, a human being is thus an extraordinarily improbable object. You know, looking at the evidence, we just shouldn't be here, basically. Alright? And then he goes on to talk about, you know, the probability of possible sequences you know, would lead to complete biological malfunction. Basically, the amount of times you could try to get something to work would be just, you know, not worth the effort. Funnily enough, I think it's this next week, or maybe the week after, Mr. Cox is beginning a new program, and he's going to be... Yeah, you look forward to that. He's going to be trying to convince people about the probability of the universe. You know, the fact that, or as far as he's concerned, the fact that the universe just happened by chance. And he's going to be looking at some of the probabilities that brought about that chance. Here's a guy saying...
does away with it altogether when you said probability.
Well, this is the problem. Yeah, it's still guessing, isn't it? But this guy here, he says it's improbable. You know, but it's we're here. And the problem is, the only other choice we have is God. We don't want that, so he's stuck with it. So, now, at least 700 scientists, all with doctorates in natural scientists, all in the evolutionary world, and we are skeptical of claims for the ability of random mutation and natural selection to account for the complexity of life. Careful examination of the evidence for the Darwinian theory should be encouraged. He says, you know, it doesn't make sense. We need to really, rather than just parrot off Darwin did such and such and was right, he said we need to actually look at what he actually said. And actually, the reality is that it didn't work that way. Now these are, I wouldn't call them God believers, but these are people within their own fields who are extremely skeptical of what the conclusions they're coming to from the scientific stuff they're dealing with. Aye.
No, like that.
That's a bit like that, okay? An Italian scientist named Francisco Redi, who lived from 1626 to 1698. In his day, many people believed that life spontaneously generated from non-living things. Now, this is, you know, pre-Darwin. Okay, this guy. One of the most common ideas of his time was that maggots spontaneously generated from meat, because they could see this bunch of meat, and all of a sudden, next thing you knew, maggots crawled over it. So they thought that they actually were created out of the meat. Okay, and the proof was offered for this that if meat was left standing out for a long time, maggots would form. Redi didn't believe that. He wasn't ready to believe that. Okay? That maggots spontaneously generated. He believed that flies landing on the meat caused maggots, and so he did a few experiments. He put meat in several jars. Some of the jars left open so the flies could land on the meat. Some of the jars are completely sealed so that no air or flies could get to the meat. Other jars are covered with netted fabric like a medical gauze. As he expected, maggots formed only in the meat that the flies could contact. No maggots formed in sealed or covered jars. Experiments proved that maggots did not spontaneously generate. Now that's going back a bit, isn't it, really? So, how did life begin? Goodness gracious me, that's a good question. And the problem is that all of evolution says that life just happened. And they call it this fancy name, abiogenesis, or spontaneous generation. It just spontaneously generated out of the scum, if you like. I suppose the ancient theory holding that certain lower forms of life, especially insects, reproduced by psychochemical agencies from inorganic substances, and has been scientifically proven that this has happened. And guess who said that? Louis Pasteur. Okay, now he knew a thing or two, didn't he? Alright? Interesting. He sealed the fate of spontaneous generation in a series of careful experiments in 1861. He demonstrated clearly that microorganisms are carried in the air. They grow in previously sterilized broths only when the broths are contaminated or by air or similar sources. Okay? Every biological living thing arises from a pre-existing living thing. Now that's interesting, because just this last year, in a predominantly evolutionary scientific magazine called Focus, Mr. Cox almost said the identical words. In his latest program, where he was showing, one of the programs where he was trying to show how life came into existence, and I believe, because I watched it, that he didn't show that. He actually just followed Darwin's stuff. But in the magazine, commenting on what he discovered so far, he actually says almost an identical statement. He says, every change you see in nature comes from something that already exists. And that's not what evolution says. Evolution says we came from nothing. So even he, in his more lucid moments, actually says something that's quite true. This guy, Fred Hoyle, quite famous, he said, any theory with a probability, and this is what Cox is going to prove, this next TV programs, the probability theory, okay? Any theory with a probability of being correct that is larger than 1 part in 10 to 40,000 must be judged superior to random shuffling, he says. The number of ways a deck of 52 cards can be arranged is, that's over 80 million trillion. So for 52 cards, you can have that many combinations. Alright? Life, however, is not just a random draw from a deck of chemical cards, but a precisely assembled house of cards built from specific combinations of components. And here is what everybody's been shouting about for the last 20 years, 25 years by Mr. Crick, okay? DNA. And you can say it any way you like, but that's how you're supposed to say it underneath there. Deoxyribonucleic acid. Alright? And to memorize that, it might come in handy at dinner party or something. And actually, basically, you've got 4 different things that make up pairs. And depending on how you make up these pairs, you end up with a man, an animal, a pig, a monkey, whatever you like. But if you were walking along the beach and you saw 3 bits of stick, no blackboard, but 3 bits of stick, and 1 stick was laid like that, and 1 stick was laid like that, and 1 stick was laid across, what would that make? An A. Now, you would think, that's amazing, look at that, and the sea just throwing that up and it's landed perfectly like that. Or would you think, aye, I'm not alone in this beach, somebody's been here.
Yes.
Okay. These are basically a language. It is the basis of all life. And they call it C, G, A, and T. And depending on how you put these things together, determines the kind of animal, insect, bird, whatever you are. Okay? But it's pre-programmed into you. And the variation is pre-programmed by using this stuff here. So this is not just a random thing. This is so accurate that they can actually take this and they can make things with it. You can't do that if you didn't know the outcome before the outcome's going to be. This is so locked in language that they can know what to do with it. And they're learning all the time what does happen with it. And they're attributing lots of different things. But when they look at that, when they, we in our common sense see 3 bits of stick and they put in a figure like an A, and we think, somebody's been here. they're looking at a really complex language, and they're saying, oh, isn't nature wonderful? It just happened by chance. You know, and that's the problem they have. DNA is a nucleic acid, usually in the form of a double helix, that contains the genetic instructions specifying the biological developments of all cellular forms of life and many viruses. Okay? So, your DNA has over 3 billion base pairs of 4 separate chemicals. Can you imagine what the odds must be involved in sequencing them into perfect order through chance and adaptation alone? When Crick first brought this helix out at Oxford, they originally thought that human beings, the genetic code was somewhere like over 100,000 different parts of the genetic series. Now they've realised it's far, far less. As a matter of fact, they had a bet with people or scientists all over the world that said how much of the genetic code is involved in the human genome. And they had all sorts of stuff from 150, 300, and the lowest they came up with, 100,000, 300,000, and the lowest they came up with was 40,000. And yet the reality so far, from what they've been able to determine, is between 20,000 and 23,000, and none of them got anywhere near that. And guess what? Because it's really complex, and yet it's very small, limited in a sense, to what makes you and me. And the real weird thing is when you start comparing us with chickens and us with other stuff, there's some things got more of what we've got in them than we have, and yet they're a chicken or something like that, you know, a potato. It's weird, real weird stuff, and they just don't understand it. So the double-stranded DNA molecule is held together by 4 chemicals: adenine, cytosine, guanine, and now the letters represent the basis for the code of life. Every 3 letters form a word, forming the genetic code for every living thing. The words make sentences: ATG, CTC, GAA, GAA, encoded in the sequence of 20 amino acids and proteins. And DNA is a template that stores the information. Now look at the words. I mean, even this is from an evolutionary perspective. This is not a God perspective. This is evolutionists describing what DNA does. Okay, and they're saying DNA is a template. Somebody's got to make a template, I think, pattern, that stores information, and information doesn't just come out of the air. Information is, well, we encode computers. You know, we put information into computers. This is the information technological age. We've got loads of people sitting in offices all over the world, and all they do all day is they code information, and then you come along with your smartphone and your smart TV and all this type of stuff, okay? Because people are busy encoding the information in there. And there's other guys scanning the information and getting information back out of it, saying, he's a Al-Qaeda. Anyway, so information. And then you have messengers. There's an RNA is a copy that transfers the information into the protein making machinery. So if you want to make something, then here's the chemicals you need to make it, but you need something to carry the message to that which is to be made, and that's called RNA, and that does the magic work. mRNA. Depending which letter base you choose determines which animal or species is produced, a bird, pig, or a man. Evolutionists believe that something comes from nothing and produces a simple cell. The problem is they can't produce something from nothing, and there's no such thing as a simple cell. They've got 2 problems before they even start. You can't present something from nothing, and there's no such thing as a simple cell, as we're going to see. This is a cell, a nucleus. You've got a protein chain, you've got the mRNA translating the stuff over, you've got growing different things, and it's all fitting like keys in a lock. And if you get the keys wrong, you end up with a mutation, and most mutations are bad. Cancer is a mutation, where instead of being controlled, it it starts to replicate without being, it goes out of control basically in the human body. Stuff like that. A simple cell. Okay? The information DNA is sufficient for directing and controlling all the processes which transpire within a cell, including diagnosing, repairing and replicating the cell. As we sit here in our human bodies, there's little cells and their job is to find things that go wrong and to fix them. And they're running through your body all the time. And the problem is when they start getting old, when they start breaking down, that's when you start getting old and you start breaking down, because they're no longer able to repair what they once were able to repair. Okay? And it's amazing, phenomenal, and it's happening without you knowing it. And it's all built in. Think of an architect blueprint having the capacity to actually, of actually building the structure depicted in the blueprint, maintaining the structure in good repair, and even replicating it. That's why stem cells, to these guys out there, stem cells are so amazing, and really there's a lot of real rush to try and figure out how to use them. Because a particular stem cell, given the right information, you can turn it into anything. You can turn it into an ear, you can turn it into a nose, you can do all sorts of stuff with it. There's certain stem cells you can do that with. And that's why it's so exciting for them at the moment. And that's why a lot of religious people are against it, because goodness, you know, they're playing God. And the problem they did have was quite often the stem cells they used were from unborn children. Now they can get around some of that nowadays. They don't need to go down that route, and they can actually take your stem cells and actually regrow organs for you eventually. Okay, that's what they're working on at the moment. So DNA stores genetic information, copies it to the RNA. RNA then directs the synthesis of the proteins. Proteins carry out the work essential to cell existence and reproduction. Okay? It's a complicated thing. Living things are by far the most complex objects we have found yet in the universe. Carl Sagan, an atheist, says the E. coli bacterium contains information of 1012 bits, equivalent to 100 million pages, 100 million pages of the Encyclopedia Britannica. That's a bacteria that if you get it, if you be in the hospital and you get it, it's like a salmonella and some of these others, E. coli, it's a baddie. But the information that controls and manipulates that thing could fill 100 million pages of the Encyclopedia Britannica. A simple cell.
How long would it take somebody to read 100 million pages?
A long time.
A long time.
Wouldn't it?
I feel like saying work.
Would
I don't think you could do it probably. Unless that was the only thing you ever did. Humans have trillions. And that's a one cell. And humans have trillions of cells. Each one more complex than the E. coli bacteria. This guy Crichton says a particular amino acid sequence was selected by chance. How rare an event. This is the guy who says, you know, it just happened. And yet he says, how can it happen? How rare an event will this be? The great majority of sequences can never have been synthesized at all at any time. This is the guy who didn't invent it, he discovered the RNA and DNA. And it's so complex, he says, this is just such a rare thing, it just can't happen. And yet, it must have happened, because we're here. An honest man, armed with the knowledge available to us now, could only state that in some sense the origin of life appears at the moment to be almost a miracle. So many other conditions which would have had to have been satisfied just to get it going. He's only talking about simple cell, he's only talking about simple life. And he's saying even that is so difficult that really it could only happen by miracle. But of course it can't happen by miracle because we don't believe in miracles. So they're stuck with ooze. Again, this should not be taken to imply that there are good reasons to believe that it could not have just happened on Earth by a perfectly reasonable set sequence of fairly ordinary chemical reactions. So in the same sentence, he says, it can't happen, but his conclusion is, because unless he wanted to believe in God, because he doesn't want to go there, his conclusion is, but it must have happened. Because that's the only conclusion we've got to. And here I go old Fred Hoyle again. The likelihood of spontaneous formation of life from inanimate matter is 1 to the number of 40,000 knots after it. It is big enough to bury Darwin and the whole theory of evolution. This guy, Paul said. He was the guy who invented the Big Bang idea.
Oh.
The current scenario of the origin of life is about as likely as the assembly of a Boeing 747 by a tornado whirling through a junkyard. Okay? So it just doesn't make sense. And you get statements like that all the way through the stuff. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But we're stuck with it. Because it's got to make sense. The theory of life is assembled by intelligence has, we believe, a probability vastly higher than that indeed. Such a theory is so obvious one wonders why it is not widely accepted as being self-evident. Alright? Mr. Cox, this next couple of weeks, will show you why he believes that probability is how it came about. Life kind of had a random beginning. Troops of monkeys, thunderworm, random typewriters could not produce the works of Shakespeare for the practical reason that the whole universe is not large enough to contain the necessary hordes of monkeys. Or the necessary typewriters and setting up the waste paper baskets required for the depositions of all the wrong attempts. The same is true for living materials. Okay? If I can synthesize life here then, I will prove that no intelligence is required to produce life in the beginning. So here's a man saying, if I can just make life, I will prove that life can happen by itself.
So
But who's he? He's intelligent. He's spending millions of pounds to try and make it happen. An irreducible complex system is one that requires several closely matched parts in order to function, and where removal of one of the components effectively causes the system to cease functioning. This is one of the arguments for the existence of God. That there are certain things in life that have been reduced to the absolute minimum, the absolute basic, and they've got to have intelligence behind it to be able to do that. One of the most common things that people talk about is the mouse trap. For years, people have been trying to come up with a better, simpler mechanism than a mousetrap. It's just so simple, it's been reduced to the very basic it can be, and you know, how do you get any better? How can you make it any better? Which parts are expendable, which parts are necessary for the mousetrap to carry out its function? You couldn't, if you take off the spring, it won't work. If you take off the piece of board in the center, it won't work. Take off the cheese, probably won't work. No, it's all irreducibly complex. Now, you saw a simplicity of a mousetrap. This is inside your body, a pump. This is a cell inside your body. And you can see it's got like a cartridge kind of case background, and it's turning around, and as it turns around, it's moving along or moving back. And it's complex, there's two parts of it, and one of those things still with the energy in the body. You won't see it with the naked eye. You can hardly see it. It's really a strong magnifying glass, a magnifying thing that you get. You need to see it. It's called the rotary motor of the flagellum of bacteria. Now, how big is a bacteria?
It's awful wee.
It's awful wee. That's inside a bacteria.
Oh.
As complex as that is.
We
You know?
couldn't make anything small as that.
We're working on it, we're trying. We've got little things, well, look at what you do with little cameras go up your body now, through your arteries. They've got little things that dig out the blocked arteries now, and all sorts of stuff. And the Japanese especially are making they're called nanotechnology, and they're making things so small they can work inside the human body. So they're working on that. But they'll never get to something as small as that.
No.
Because a bacteria, I mean, we're surrounded by billions of bacteria on us, inside us, outside us, at the moment. You can't see them, they're too small. Yes. It's a complex chemical process. By vision, blood clotting, transport inside the cell. In short, highly sophisticated molecular machines control every cellular process, transport information, flip switches on and off, conduct electrical currents, manufacture molecules, move around, etc. Thus, the details of life are finely calibrated, and the machinery of life is enormously complex. Again, there's no such thing as a simple cell. This is inside one. A cell magnified 1,000 million times. 1,000 million times. Simple?
Looks like a spaceship.
Yeah.
It's all, you know, highly sophisticated piece of biological machinery. The Golgi complex, nuclear envelope, chromatin, microtubules, mitochondrion, the power plant, that's that little thingy area that gives you energy. It's great stuff. It's amazing stuff.
It is.
You know, that just happened by chance. Lysum, one of those up there is lysum. It's a garbage dump. It contains enzymes which rip apart, degrade molecules for future. It recycles. It's a recycling machine inside that cell. Endoplastic reticulums, rough and smooth, rough membrane system where the proteins are synthesized. The rough appearance is due to the ribosomes attached to it. A ribosome synthesizes the proteins. The Golgi complex, proteins are sent here after synthesis for modification. You know, this is a factory unit going on inside a simple cell. A simple cell. Billions of non-living parts, over 5 million non-living parts of Boeing 747. The human body is composed of over 250 different kinds of cells. Red blood cells, white blood cells, muscle cells, fat cells, nerve cells, etc. And it's got power plants inside each one of them. Remember, this is supposed to be a simple cell involved in primordial soup, which can be made from gas and rock by accident. It looks more like a complex mini chemical factory to me. If it could be demonstrated in any complex, this is Darwin, he said, if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. That was Darwin himself. That was way before he could magnify something 1,000 million times. The information content of a simple cell has been established around 10-12 bits compared to about 100 pages again, it's exactly the same. The information in a simple cell has been established, and that's Sagan saying that. The cell's nucleus is the guy who's today quite vocal as far as evolution is concerned. He's a guy who takes on religious people all over, and yet even he admits a nucleus contains digitally coded database, large information content in all 30 volumes of encyclopedia put together. This figure is for each cell, not all at all, it's for each cell, not all the cells of the body put together. So each cell, he says, the information is just absent, and yet he says there's no God. All these things involve ingestion, digestion, conversion of energy, excretion, respiration, reproduction, circulation, growth, sight, the eye, locomotion, regulation, response to stimuli. It's all complex. A cell would not really be alive or survive unless all life functions became operative at once. So how did even a simple single cell get the opportunity to evolve? For you, Lord, I may be glad for your work. I will triumph in the works of your hands. O Lord, how great are your works, your thoughts are very deep. O Lord, how manifold are your works, in wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your possessions. You know, you stand in awe, don't you, really? Go to you see that one, saw it last week. A simple molecule of amino acid is evidence of life. And yet, it just doesn't come together. Okay, any questions? You happy with that?
Well,